Welcome back to the Fantasy Network, everyone. My name is, of course, Jimmy Nuts, and today we are going to be doing May in a nutshell for 2025. I have the absurd talent of timing as I go live here for the stream. Many of you, most of you will be watching after the fact. We are underneath a tornado watch, and I'm not sure what's going to happen. I could lose power. I don't think the tornado will probably hit here. Hoping not. But if it does, or if power gets cut out and this stream comes to an abrupt end, just know that I will put it back up and go live again. It will probably make for a very disjointed wrap-up and reading stream, which I'm not a big fan of. I'm very particular. I like things to be neat and orderly for the most part. But we're just going to have to roll with the punches. Hopefully nothing happens. No tornadoes, no power outages. It's all going to be Gucci, right? We're all going to be good. If this is your first time checking this out, yes, this is a live stream, but it is perfectly fine to watch it after the fact. I'm going to have timestamps down below in the description. If you don't want to hear me interacting with chat, you just want to hear about the books, those timestamps for each book's talk beginning will be down below in the description as soon as we go off from the live format. It is wonderful to see everybody here in the chat. Wrapping up what was honestly a really great reading month, not a massive amount of books or anything, but really got something out, I think, of every single thing I read. Maybe minus one little thing, but even then it still wasn't bad at all. Pretty excited to talk about the books today, though I don't think I have anything very profound to bring to the table, except for this snazzy shirt. Of course. Jared Henderson is here. Jimmy Allen told me that if you read Wolf Hall, he'll pay you $500. Is this like a Sisterhood of the Traveling $500 bill? Is that what this is? Also, look, full body. Woo. Good to see a Reader's Journey. Good to see Evie, Paloma. All the normal suspects, usual suspects are here, and definitely some people who are also not, which is fantastic. So it's good to see everybody. I'm excited to talk about tonight's books, but I'm also excited to see what the Patreon pick of the month has in store for me. I do have I think at least one planned read in the month of June and two books that I'm in the middle of. One I will definitely finish in June, and then one that, we'll see. I'm not sure. Wolf Hall whenever I feel like reading about Thomas Cromwell again, and I can focus on that. Hopefully. Evie says Mother Nature will have her way no matter what our wants and needs. That is true, but I'm hoping that she is graceful towards me tonight so I can do this stream. Andrew Cross says the Devils gets nutted or I'm rescinding my subscription. Well, don't do that. This channel cannot shrink anymore. That would be very, very bad for me. Looking here, getting a weather warning to my phone currently. Not been great weather. For sure. This is not a Hawaiian shirt. It is Hawaiian adjacent, Anitha. Just to be very, very clear. So I'm going to turn my phone on Do Not Disturb so I don't get too distracted by the weather. But it's great to see everybody. Joanna's here. BellTube, of course, is here. BellTube, shout out to BellTube. If you did not watch the last episode, Chatting with Nuts, shame on you. It was featuring BellTube, and I think it is a top 3 episode all time. I had an absolute blast talking with Brian as always, but I really felt like we were just on a whole nother level. And he did send me a Rick Thunder mug, and that's a fact, and I'm very appreciative for that, for sure. Good to see you, Logan. It's been a minute. Good to see you, man. Matt on Books is here. We love to see that. So many people here that I genuinely appreciate. Story 2, Prophet Song when? We'll talk about it. It's supposed to be this month. So I'm hoping that will actually happen because I've been trying to read Prophet Song for a while. So let's get started. And we're going to start out with definitely the book of the month. And it's been a return to fantasy for May. Not that I don't read fantasy, but I usually read a healthy mix of things, at least in my estimation. But the book of the month is not a fantasy book. And it is one that I made a video for here on the channel, which if you've been following the channel for any amount of time, a dedicated video to one book has not happened in almost 2 years. And that is The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, her debut novels, I believe published sometime in the 70s or 80s. I think it was 70s now, if I can remember correctly. I had it all ironed out in the video that I did about The Bluest Eye. And I had a commenter, and I forgive me, I can't remember who it was. But someone commented and said, if Jimmy is making a video in 2025 about one book, then whether or not it's interesting, like I have to take notice of that because it's been so long, which I appreciated. That means that they've been around for a long time, because for the first 3 years this channel was up, it was only book reviews essentially, and they're still there, and I'm still proud of a lot of those. But this is a book that I felt compelled to talk about. It's one that stayed on my mind, and it was really challenging for me to formulate my thoughts, because The Bluest Eye is about a young girl growing up, I believe, in 1930s Ohio, and she is going through some horrible stuff and is being let down by people all around her. And a lot of the insecurities that you feel as a child usually can be dispelled by people who appreciate you and support you and love you, like family and friends. But Toni Morrison decided to kind of inspect what would happen if all of those insecurities and doubts and self-loathing were actually reinforced, or if not just dispelled, by loved ones and being let down. And it's a very grim tale. There are multiple experiences here from different POVs, really focused on the main character, of course, but does take its time to be nuanced and show other ways that childhood could be good and bad in kind of the same community. I'm not going to go on and on about this book, because to be honest with you, I'm really proud of the video that I did for The Bluest Eye. I think it's one of my best videos, and it's something that I just feel, I don't know, super passionate about for some reason. And Toni Morrison has definitely thrown out a lot of books from the top of the TBR, and I'm hoping to read Beloved very soon. So if you want to know more about The Bluest Eye, obviously I'm saying it's a debut, it's tragic, and it's disjointed, but you can get all of the information from the video that I post. I know it's not going to be for everyone, because a lot of the people who watch my channel are here for fantasy, but it's definitely a book that I think if you're trying to read a little more widely, you want to try something different, this would be it. Just forewarning, it's extraordinarily dark, and it is disjointed. There's a lot of structure that I would say is not typical in most modern day fiction, and Toni Morrison definitely was trying something pretty ambitious in her debut. And I talk about her author's note in the video, but she actually feels that she might not have succeeded totally. I'm kind of both opinions. I think it could have been better, but also thought it was still very effective, and I like what she was going for there. So absolutely getting the nut button, The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison. First book by her for me to read. Glad it was her debut. Hopefully it's only up from here. But The Bluest Eye, even though it's not a perfect book, was just so impactful and had like a levity to it that it's hard to come by books when you read all the time. It starts to use, I don't want to say apathy, but it's a little harder to see the standouts. You know, they don't always punch you in the face. And I feel like Bluest Eye punched me in the face repeatedly. And for that, I had to take note. And for that, I had to give it praise. And made one of my favorite videos I've made in a long time. So if you want to know more about that, please go check out that video. I would greatly appreciate it. And let me know what you guys think of The Bluest Eyes. Anyone that ends up checking it out, I would love to see what the general consensus is among people. But tremendous stuff. Toni Morrison's writing style is just fabulous. Absolutely tremendous. And for it to be such beautiful writing about essentially what's a psychological murder of a child is, I mean, that's all you need to know about the book, honestly. Reminder, you know, I did get the nut button. Usually if I'm giving something the nut button, I would say 9 times out of 10, that means that I'm considering it for my top 10 at the end of the year. I always do a top 10 at the end of the calendar year. And I got to say, Bluest Eyes is definitely up there in the running. There's been some heavy hitters this year, but, you know, not guaranteed it'll make the top 10, but it has to be in consideration, I would say. So very thankful that I read this, and I think I read it at the exact right time, as my mood was quite dark at the time as well. I'm one of these weird people that like to read darker things whenever I'm feeling down, most of the time, at least. So Evie said, you formulated your thoughts beautifully. Morrison would be proud. I don't know if she'd be proud, but I do appreciate that very, very much. Maybe one day she'll see it. That'd be kind of cool. Maybe. Mitch said, sounds absolutely nut button worthy without a doubt. I would say that is definitely the truth. And by the way, shout out to Evie. Evie is actually the person who sent me this book. I had mentioned that I really wanted to read this before I jumped into Song of Solomon and Beloved. And Evie kindly gifted this to me and sent me in the mail. And Evie is just one of the most giving and kind people in the community for many, many years. So Evie, thank you very much. She said, The Bluest Eye is another one of those important books that should be required reading. I definitely think that people could get a lot out of it. And I think it definitely stretches people's experiences and perceptions, I think. So It is a great review video. Thank you, Derry. I hesitated to call it a review because I don't know if I was necessarily reviewing. I was really making a lot of commentary about how I felt about the book and how I related to the book, and in some ways could not relate to the book because of my own lived-in experiences. But I really wanted to highlight the author note that Toni Morrison had at the end of the book. I just thought it was fabulous. It was something that I read twice, which I usually don't even read author notes, and I'm glad I read this one. So for sure. Toni Morrison gets the bluest nut button. It is a blue button. This is true. I would join the beloved read along possibly. Well, you can join. I believe Jared is going to join me. So me, you, and Jared could do it. That would be a ton of fun, Joanna. I would love that. Jose says, Jimmy, how do you approach a book that is notoriously dad? I'm assuming that should be bad. How do you get excited to read it? I find it very hard to start books like that. So this is a really good question, because one of the worst parts about being like a social reader and online is that you get a lot of preconceived notions about books if you go looking for them, or sometimes even if you don't go looking for them. One of my biggest pet peeves, and I'm going to put a disclaimer on this as soon as I say it, but one of my biggest pet peeves is whenever I'll say, in any situation, a Discord message or wherever, I'll be like, oh, I'm reading this book. And then someone just chimes in and is like, that book is ass. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I guess I should temper my expectation. It just affects me. I don't know why. I'm not saying people can't hate on the book or dislike it. Of course they can. But I have been more reserved in talking about what I'm reading, because I feel like those things start to impact me because I'm a human being. So really, I tried to approach a book, if it's notoriously bad, I have an idea that's bad, I kind of try to just blank my mind and not engage about it and read it in silence most of the time, and then come to my own conclusion at the end. And then maybe I will go look and see what other people are thinking, especially if I'm conflicted about it. That's when I usually go and try to find out what other people are saying about it. But I really try to steer clear of a lot of the other influences around me, just so I can kind of provide my own original thoughts as best as I can. That's not always possible, but I do try that. I also don't really read books, and this is just the truth. I don't really read books that are notoriously hated for the most part. For me to read something that is, by the way, Bluest Eye, this is completely independent of Bluest Eye, by the way. But this is just a general question that I do think is interesting. I feel as if I don't read books that are just blasted. I might read books that are controversial, but the only time I would read a book that is like unanimously considered bad is if I feel like it's being unjustly criticized. A really good example of a book that I read that was super polarizing is A Little Life. But that's not it's hated by some people. Don't get me wrong. And I understand why. But I read it more so because there's people who say it's the best book they ever read and people who say it's the worst book they ever read. And I'm like, well, I'd like to find out where I kind of sit. And generally, I am in the middle somewhere. So, yeah. And to be honest, Jose, also just, being someone that reads books on the internet and talks about it, and, there's people that watch and whatnot. I don't always feel excited to read what I have to read. And I say have to because there are some things I just sign myself up for. But even voluntarily, like sometimes I go into a book and I'm just not feeling it, and then I'll either get into it or I won't. And mood affects every single thing that we do. It's just human nature. I also just happen to have very high highs and very low lows. So the mood is always affecting me. But I just try to go into everything with an even mindset and try to be open to what the author wants to do, whether that's just flat out entertain me or get me to think about like philosophical questions and moral questions, like whatever it is. I just try to meet the book halfway, no matter what it is, and no matter how silly it is. Like whenever I read Fourth Wing, I could have easily just lambasted, but I tried to find out why do so many people love this book, and whether I was successful in that, I don't know, but I at least gave it a valiant effort. Great question, Jose. Great question. Shad said, you don't need a book too much you in the face. Alan's willing to do it anytime. I assume punch me in the face. I like that. Very nice. Oh, man. So thank you, Super Gainsborough. Said, love the shirt. Thank you. I very, very much appreciate that. Oh, well, Morrison has passed us on from this world, so she's somewhere being proud. Okay, I had no idea she had passed away. I literally was watching interviews and I felt like it was so recent, but maybe it wasn't. Rest in peace. She will never see this then. That's unfortunate. Joanna said, I wish my Bluest eye review got that much praise, but Jimmy's review certainly deserves it. Give Joanna her praise, okay? Joanna's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. What's happening? A first binding buddy read? I assume this is related to terrible books. Not that I think it's terrible, but I've heard some people say that. No, I don't think I'll be reading first binding. I highly doubt it, unfortunately. Sarah Beth said, I had to read Beloved in college. It is powerful. I've heard a lot of people talking about having to read Beloved in college. It seems to be one of those books that is taught pretty widely through universities. Jared Henderson says, one of my biggest pet peeves is a guy in Hawaiian shirts DNFing books. What book would that be, Jared? I think I have an idea. Marianne said, hype and dishype really affect me too. I can't really read hyped books right away because I will find every issue with it. I've got a problem. I can go both ways. I can get swept up in the hype and just have a great time, which is cool. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Or I can go like how you're saying and kind of nitpick it and see where it's coming from. It just depends on the mood at the time. Drizzt said, need you to read Stephen Donaldson. I've attempted to read Thomas Covenant book 1 twice and have quit about halfway each time, unfortunately. I am going to read The Gap Cycle by Donaldson, but I will not read Thomas Covenant. I probably won't continue with Thomas Covenant. Not because I think it's horrible or anything, but to be quite honest, I just was really, really bored. Which I love boring books. Maybe in the right mood, I could come back to it. Possibly. Maybe. Sounds like you need to read 11 Cycle. I also tried that book twice and DNF that as well. 11 Cycle might be my most disliked book I've ever attempted to read, actually. That would probably win what I would consider a pretty bad book, honestly. And I don't say that very often. So Toni Morrison passed in 2019. Thank you. I was not sure. StoryTube says, I'm still sorry for ruining Gideon Falls for you. Yes, I read the first half, and then I just didn't bother to read second half because Carlos had told me it was so bad. And I actually was enjoying it. I think it was the first Western comic I ever read. But honestly, if the second half was that bad, I'm glad that I did not continue, to be honest, because I had such a good time with the first half. I have positive memories. She died? Wow, I didn't know that. You're telling me now for the first time. Jimmy Nuts. Thank you, Mitch. Always count on you to troll. Let's get on to, we talked about hype. We're talking about fantasy. I don't think you could be online in the booktube sphere without hearing about Will of the Many by James Islington. Okay, so full disclosure, my first experiences with James Islington were not great. I thought that the first book in the Lycanius trilogy was fine. I thought it had some really great ideas, but I was not blown away by the characterization nor the writing. I loved a lot of the world building stuff. There's a lot of stuff I'm just there for when it comes to epic fantasy. I was pretty excited. Will of the Many, I should say, I actually read book 2 and I ended up DNFing book 3 about 80% of the way through. It's one of my latest DNFs in a series ever. I just could not be bothered to care anymore. I really did not enjoy book 2 or 3 of the Lycanius trilogy after an okay start. The Will of the Many, in my opinion, from my experience, was mostly positive. I really enjoyed a lot about this book. There was also some parts of this book that I felt were whelming or maybe even slightly underwhelming. But I think James Islington has gotten better. I would be curious if anyone else agrees. Maybe someone who did not like Lycanius and ended up liking The Will of the Many. I just found his writing to be more enjoyable. Not my favorite, but definitely more effective and easier time for me to read and get into and appreciate. Without a doubt, this book, I think, was like 600 something pages. For me, I've heard some people say, man, I blew through this book in like a day or two. This book felt so long to me. And a lot of it came from the writing. And this is the part of Islington that I still dislike, is that I think he just loves using a lot of words, when sometimes I wonder how much more brief could he have been. This is not an Islington problem. This feels like a chunky fantasy problem that we've been seeing for decades. Not to say that anything should be cut. I'm just saying wording it possibly different could help out. Roman inspiration was here I don't care about. I have to come clean. And as a friend of Alan from the Library of Alexandria, who is all things Roman and a genius when it comes to that topic, I have decided I just simply don't care that much about Rome. I want to care about. I like the idea of Rome more than Roman things, and there's a ton of Roman influence on the naming and the world building in this. For some reason, my brain, and this is me problem, I could not keep any of the names other than Vis in my head. And I can keep every Targaryen name in my head, all the lineage. So it's just something specifically about these names and some of the titles and such that just did not stick with me, that I imagine if you were better versed in Rome, maybe it would stick more. Or maybe if you just aren't dumb like me. Like I just felt like an idiot at times, being like, I remember this character name, but I don't remember who they are. And it wasn't like I was taking long leaps between this book. Like I was reading it physically and on audio and every day. I mean, I was reading a little bit every day because I was enjoying myself. But for some reason, nothing could stick with me as far as identities. And that kind of comes into my biggest criticism of this book, to be honest, other than the fact that I did feel like there were times where things were being repeated. One of my bigger pet peeves is he would actually have a really nice line of dialogue where I'd be like, oh, they're being a little cheeky right there. They're taking the piss out of this guy. And then he would follow it up with an exposition of being like, and I could tell he was being sarcastic. And I'm like, you actually wrote some really great dialogue here. You didn't need to tell me that. Whatever. That's just a me pet peeve, I guess. But the characters for me are just certainly not the most memorable. There were a few that I thought were cool, but none of these characters will ever stay in my mind. That's just me. Vis as a first-person character was acceptable. I don't think he's bad. I don't think he's great. I just feel like he's fairly forgettable. The one thing I will say about the main character, Vis, which, by the way, I should probably say what the Will of Many is about. The Will of Many is about an empire of sorts who are just dominating everything around them. There is a magic system where like the lower ranks of the caste system end up giving up their will, which power the top ends, and on from there. And Vis belonged to one of the places that was conquered by this empire, and he happened to be royalty's son. And in that, he is now part of this empire, and there is a group fighting against the empire that would love to use him for their devices, but also the empire has use for Vis because he happens to be quite notable. He has some unique traits, we will say. He is special, as most protagonists are in fantasy books. Vis is interesting, the most interesting for this fact. Islington could have easily just had this son of a conquered land in the empire wanting to just tear it apart from the inside. We've seen this a lot of times, like angry revenge protagonist. Rin from Poppy War is what I'm currently thinking of, though I can't remember her exact situation. But very angry, very big revenge tale, and it works. We can all get behind that. But Vis is kind of interesting because Vis is like, yeah, they did take my home, but I'm also starting to get a little bit comfortable here. I'm also wanting to look out for my best interests. And what can I really do as a single person? So Vis has like this weird thing where he's not like totally in rebellion mode, but he is certainly harboring hard feelings against this empire. But he has to admit the fact that as life goes on, that he's becoming a little bit more comfortable. And I actually think that that is really interesting as an interpersonal conflict, despite all the factions and the empire moving around and whatever. That is the best part of Vis as a character. Outside of that, I really did not have much feelings for Vis until a little bit later into the book. There's an academy setting here. People were warning me, as someone who is not a really big fan of academy settings anymore, that this book was going to feature that and I would probably struggle. I have to tell you, I didn't love the academy setting. It didn't bother me at all. And I actually did not feel like, I mean, it's a large portion of the book, but there was enough going on around it that it didn't really detract from my enjoyment. Of course, there's a murderous bully. Of course, there's a teacher that hates our protagonist for some reason. And, it's typical. It's Harry Potter, to be honest. I mean, I'm not saying it's a one-for-one, but like these are tropes that we see time and time again. I just kind of move on from whatever. It's fine. I thought everything else around the academy was more interesting than it, but it really wasn't that bad. And he did come up with some really interesting academy-specific things and who is running this academy and where it is literally placed on the map is so special that the academy did have some weight to it, some importance that I really did like. There's also this whole idea of like there's a military head and a religious head, and like what is the religious part doing that the military doesn't know? And now we are kind of in a we've conquered everything, so should we scale back the military? Of course we can. So there's all that at play too. Islington is such an ambitious guy. Like whether or not I liked Licanius, he did go for it, which I respect immensely. And the Will of the Many feels like he's really going for it. And that was just punched home, like absolutely slammed home. Tomahawk 360 windmill slam dunked home with the ending of this book. The ending of this book is absolutely bananas. I loved it. I could see people being annoyed by it for sure. It could be, this is a story I thought was going to be this way, and now this story could go a million different ways that I don't want to see. I get it. I loved it. I thought the ending was phenomenal. I think it's one of like the better endings of a book one that I've read in recent memory. And I would wonder with how many people are so excited about this series, how much of that excitement actually comes from the end of book one. Because as someone who halfway through is like, it's fine, it's okay. I'm probably not going to read book two. I pre-ordered book two. I'm going to read book two when it comes out this fall. I believe it's this fall or this winter. And it feels good to be excited about an ongoing fantasy series that actually has fans. I mean, there are people theory crafting about this because the end of this book is so ridiculous that it opens up the door for a lot of things. And for me, the possibilities that he is laying out for this series, I am so along for the ride. I don't know if I'm emotionally invested in the story at all, but much like the From television show that I've talked about before, I just have to find out what happens next. And that's a really good first step for me to get into a series. I will say, Licanius also hooked me at the end of book one and then let me down tremendously. So Islington is 0 for 1 with delivering for me. But the way this went, I like the cut of his jib. I like the balls on it. Like he is willing to go to crazy places and really embrace science fiction and fantasy. Like he's just saying, yeah, this is going to be out there and it's going to be in your face and we're going to do some weird stuff. And I'm down for it. So a very middling experience with some highs, some lows, some eye roll moments possibly, but also some cool stuff. A lot of invention around the way the academy works and how they test their students. And like, it's not Quidditch. It's way better than that. But by the end, I got to tell you, I ended up liking this book. And it was probably sitting at a mixed to maybe somewhat negative rating for me. Just because, again, we talked about hype. I was kind of expecting a lot from this book. But the ending really pushed it into the positive range for me. And it's one that I'm really excited I read. It was entertaining. It was thrilling, especially the climax. So it's cool. It's cool that there's a series out there that is continuing on, that has a fan base, like a real fan base. I mean, this is a pretty popular book. He's really nailed it. That we can theory craft about and stuff. I love that stuff. So very good. I enjoyed it. Not going to get the nut button at all. It will definitely not be in my top 10 books of the year, but I would put it up for best ending of the year if I had that award. Maybe I'll create the award just so I can give it out to this book. Let's go to the chat and see. I know that this book very popular, but of course there are people who, will say this didn't do anything for me. I'm sure some of you are here, but I kind of want to see if anyone else had the same experience as me where it was like, fine, and then the ending was like, I'm in. Jared said, Jimmy is conforming to the will of the many in this review. I am giving up all of my will to the check-marked people on YouTube for sure. The Roman inspiration is fairly light, I thought. Yeah, I agree with that. It's more like the influence on the naming of things and the structure of the society. I actually didn't really feel much Roman inspiration outside of that, really. But the things that were Roman did not really land with me, and I think it's just because I'm not a real big fan of Rome. Oh, yeah, mostly aesthetic. Yeah, I would agree. Kevin Jenkins says, read some Colleen McCullough? I don't know how you say that name. Then tell me you don't care about Rome, buddy. Well, I probably will never read that book, if I'm being honest. I think they're pretty long, aren't they? If they're not, I would consider reading it. Evie said, so you're saying you don't think about the Roman Empire on a daily basis? I, in fact, do not, unfortunately, which Alan would probably enjoy hearing. By the way, as I go through these comments in chat, if you hit the like button, it helps me out tremendously. So if you're sitting here and you're one of the 100 and something people that are here live, or you're watching after the fact, hit the thumbs up button. It helps me out quite a bit. Beltube said, I'm with you. I could take or leave Roman-style books and fantasy all day long. I was kind of hoping that this would be the big one for me, but I think it's just a last straw in the fact that I just don't care that much. I'm finishing. Finishing Wolf Hall would be succumbing to the will of the one, says Hobo Giant. The one being Jared Henderson. This felt like a Mary Sue to me. Maybe a little bit. I don't know. So I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like, and this is nothing against you, Ryan. I'm not like going off on you. I feel like every time I read a first person fantasy where the character is obviously going to be interesting and special, I feel like people call them a Mary Stu or a Mary Sue. I just think that this is like one of those things. I'm not saying that this isn't true for this book. I would have to think about it and go back. But I was just thinking about this, like every first person story in fantasy, I feel like this accusation gets thrown out as if like that's surprising, I guess. You know, I'm not saying I enjoy that, but I don't know. It's just something I was thinking about. Also, I wanted to say, and this is going to be true of a book that I'm going to talk about, I think next. Yeah, it'll be the book I talk about next. I was really interested in like the very first chapter of this book. Not interested very much in part one at all. The end of part one of this book, I have to give it credit, was also excellent. I thought it was crazy. And it was actually a scenario in the book where I didn't think he would go for it. And there was a little bit of a twist in this massive moment that affects everyone that I loved. And it's ironically, it's something that I've always thought about putting if I ever wrote a fantasy book. I was like, that's an event I would do. And James Islington did it at the end of Act 1. So the end of Act 1 really kept me going until the end, which I also enjoyed. I almost forgot to say that. Justin says, Rin was miserable for me in the second book. Yeah, she's a miserable protagonist, without a doubt. Daniel Klauser says, people act like Will of the Many is mind-blowing, but really, it's just a solid execution of standard tropes with an ending that is legitimately original for fantasy, but has been done in sci-fi. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't disagree at all. Even like Candace was just a combination of popular tropes and fantasy. Yeah, I don't think that's also, like, it's not inherently a negative thing, but it's more of a, like, if you're looking for something totally new, totally original, maybe it won't be here, right? Rhea Lucaria at book. Yeah, I did feel maybe slight Rhea Lucaria vibes. Very little. What if you substituted Vin for Rin? Would it be better, worse, or the same? It's a good question. I don't know the answer. Mitch said, looks like Jimmy has firmly picked a side in the Canadian versus Australian science fiction fantasy author debate that has divided the book sphere. You heard it here first, folks. You heard it here first. Marianne said, academic settings are an anti-trigger word for me, but I do want to read this book. Probably going to wait for the series to be over. Yeah, certainly not a bad thing to wait till it's over. I don't like academy settings either, and I still enjoyed it. I thought it was just brief enough that it worked, even though it's a large portion of the book. It just didn't feel like it was solely revolving around that. It was more so trying to figure out actually what was going on in this location, and I liked that. Daniel said, I did like Will of the Many a lot, but I feel like this is a poster child for overhype. So many people would have liked it more if they had not expected dying from loving it so much. See, this is hard, Daniel, because like maybe it's overhyped for someone who's read a ton of fantasy or reads a ton of books. Like, I'm not saying that someone couldn't just be over the moon about it if they have, but I think that this is one of those books that the hype is probably way more beneficial for bringing new readers in. I think Red Rising is a great example of this. I've been so shocked. Obviously, Brandon Sanderson counts, but I've been so shocked by the amount of people when I say I'm reading and they ask me what I read, and I say mostly science fiction fantasy. How many of them are like, man, I want to try Red Rising? And I'm like, how do you know of that? Of course, it's popular. It just always shocks me. I think Will of the Many has the potential to have that kind of reach. So I think the hype, of course, could affect us negatively with our expectations and our experience. I would say for me, I was very whelmed until the ending. But for new readers or people who are coming back to fantasy, I think it has a lot of that sauce that people would like to come back for, personally. Paloma said, I thought The Will of the Many was fine. Will I read book 2? Sure, at some point, but I am in no rush. I have such little TBR plan for this that I was like, I'll read book 2 when it comes out. I'll be a part of the conversation when it drops. I think that'll be fun. And I really hope that Joanna's right, and I'm with you. I hope book 2 delivers. Hopefully. Eric Blinn said, holy shit, Jimmy is reading a book 2. Eric. I believe it was either last month or month before. I read like 2 or 3 book 2s. I think I've read like 4 or 5 book 2s this year. I have changed the perception of me only reading book 1s. I am continuing series nowadays, which is a nice change of pace, to be honest. Moby Dick Win Jimbo. Whenever I feel like really engaging, and that is not going to be right now with life the way it is, unfortunately. Jason Brogan said, The Will of the Many is so good. I did just DNF the Devils, however. First half was great, but the start of the second half was starting out a bit lame, in my opinion. Well, I'm going to cover the Devils in my next slide. Spoiler, I freaking loved it, and I will talk more about that in just a minute here. Shout out to Mrs. Nuts, always stellar graphics. Always shout out to Mrs. Nuts. She keeps this channel moving and did a great job on the thumbnail as well. Justin said, it sucked that I read Red Rising before this. I kept getting the names confused. A little bit of that Roman inspiration for sure. What's up, Chris? Good to see you, man. First Man in Rome book, 1 of 7, is only 930 pages, including a 200-page glossary. Easy read. Oh, man. 7-book series are so not my vibe right now. Comrade Nerd says, looks like the paperback version has a blurb on the cover from Petrick Leo. Very, very cool. Petrick has definitely made it. He is the dude when it comes to endorsements, I feel. Jenna Rose Reed said, I recently got Imperium from Thrift Books after hearing everyone else praise it. I just wanted to make sure I had the right one. Okay, very cool. Another one. Eric Blinn said, mind blown, good sir. I'm full of, almost 6 years into this YouTube game, and I'm still full of surprises. I mean, look at this shirt I have on. It's outrageous. Outrageous. Let's talk about the next book. That also was not hooking me outside of chapter 1. Oh, Dylan's Book Nook said, rare that I can attend anything live, but glad to spend my Friday even with the best in the biz. Thank you very much, Dylan. I'm glad that you could also catch it. And Only Best Fantasy Novel said, nice to know there's at least one other person on here who liked the Devils. I'm going to talk about that as well. Let's bring it up. So the Devils, I'm very positive on this book. So we were talking about expectations. I saw so many other people saying how mid it was, or, you know, the people who got it early. I just felt like, and to be fair, I don't see everything. Okay. I try to avoid especially ARC reviews because I don't want to have expectations going in. But from what I had saw, a lot of people saying, it was mid, it was fine, it wasn't very funny. So I was like, okay, I better temper my expectations a little bit. And I got to tell you, chapter 1, loved it. And then I was like, I'm not so sure about this book. And then at the end of section 1, I thought it was one of Joe Abercrombie's best scenes, actually. I thought that the way he built tension in the moment, and unveiling another member of the crew, and just the ability of them, I'm trying not to give away spoilers, like building up into that moment was just such a perfect crescendo and very cinematic, I would say, which I will kind of elaborate on in just a little bit. But the end of part 1, just like Will of the Many, really said, okay, I'm in. Let's see what happens. And though I think it was part 2, we get a little bit of a split up. I thought the belly of the book dragged just a little bit there, which is why this isn't overwhelmingly positive. I love this book. I had a really nice time with it. It is Joe Abercrombie being Joe Abercrombie. Yes, I've seen people say that, but I thought that he was doing some more things with his prose and the way that he was using the voice of the book. I felt like it was a little bit more of someone telling you the story, like a little bit more of an omniscient feeling, even though you get all that cool third person limited, like inner monologue. The way the story was rolling, there felt to be like a consistent tone across. And that tone is, of course, sarcastic, which is in First Law, but more so here. And I also felt that this book did a great job of balancing inner monologue to exposition, which leads me to probably one of my more controversial statements about this book is that I think that this might actually make for a better adaptation to the screen if that were to happen for Joe Abercrombie. We know that Best Served Cold's happening and then probably the trilogy if that's successful. I have a feeling Joe Abercrombie wrote this thinking, how can I make this as easy to adapt as possible? I think that this would be a really cool adaptation. So The Devils, for those who don't know, is set in a alternate Europe that is high fantasy. Yes, Joe Abercrombie did high fantasy in an alternate version of our world, and his high fantasy, or his secondary fantasy world that he created in First Law is low fantasy. I mean, that's very on brand for Joe Abercrombie. And we are given a mission. We have an unlikely candidate for a throne, we'll say, and is going to be transported there and is going to be attended by some of the devils that live underneath the ground, and certainly are flamboyant, in my opinion, very memorable and funny. I loved it. I failed you all as someone who reviews books, someone who talks about books. I've always been upfront on this channel that when I read, I am always reading for a wider audience than just myself. Of course, I give you my personal anecdotes, sure, but I'm also trying to think about who this book would work for every time I go in to read. I did not do that here. I didn't. Joe Abercrombie is one of the very few authors that when I read, I don't necessarily care about the outside world when I'm reading it, and I read this one just for me. One, life sucks right now. Two, it's been 4 years, I think, since I've read a Joe Abercrombie novel, and I was ready for it, and I just wanted to have it for myself. That's why there's not a lot of First Law content on the channel. If you go back and look, I've made very little, I think maybe 1 or 2 things for First Law, because this is just one of those ones. I can unplug the router and read it. Like, I just unplug the router and read it, and people can have every single criticism they want. But for me, I just had a great time. I had a blast. So I failed you in the sense that I was not thinking of any of you when I read this book. It was just for me, and it was awesome. I loved it. I found it funny. I liked the ensemble cast. I loved all of the dialogue, which Joe Abercrombie's always been very good at. But I thought that each character came from such a different background, and he's using like horror archetypes and then throwing that into a fantasy world along with some elves. And I just really liked all the things that he put into the stew for this story. And I did enjoy the pacing of the book, minus a little bit of the splitting up, I believe in part 2. Like I said, kind of drug for me just a bit. But once we got to where we were going, especially, I really liked what was happening. And I liked the twist that Joe Abercrombie did. Maybe not the most unpredictable thing, but it got me. Maybe I'm a little bit naive, but I enjoyed the ending of this very much. And I really want to read anything else that gets put out into this world. I will tell you, if you were hoping that Joe Abercrombie was going to flex his world building chops and really go into a lot more detail, because First Law, while it had some cool world building, was very sparse and left a lot to the imagination and made people like me and my friend Christian were just like, man, we want to hear more about the Maker. We want to hear more about these other places. Joe was never going to do that in First Law. Maybe he will in the future, but he hasn't really to this point. This world, I don't... Like, it's interesting in the fact that it's like alternate Europe and that it's high fantasy. But outside of that, I never really got a good sense for the world. I never really felt like the world was like this magnificent thing, even though I did like the setting. Like the scene to scene settings, all very vivid, very nice. But as a world setting, you know, it's nothing special, I will say. I don't think that's Joe Abercrombie's strongest point. It's just not. What I do think Joe Abercrombie excels at, and he did this in First Law, and I think it's one of the things that I've really failed to talk about that I really enjoy, but he's like, once again in The Devils, just like in First Law, taking people from like various backgrounds and clashing them all together. So they have different beliefs, they have different ideals and purposes, and it all comes together in a conflict that has to be resolved because these people have to accomplish something. I'm thinking of like Logan Ninefingers going south type stuff. But I like it a little bit more in The Devils, to be honest. I loved the crew, especially after part 1, and the way that they started to view each other, despite their biases, despite their backgrounds, despite their beliefs. Dare I say, it felt a bit hopeful. It is a Joe Abercrombie novel. It is grim. It's a bit circular in some regard. I almost felt like it was a little more lighthearted, though there's definitely still some grim stuff in here. And I don't know, I actually felt a sense of hope being in a world where I don't understand everyone. I try to, but I don't. And sometimes I have to interact with people in different parts of life that I genuinely don't understand why they think the way they think. This is a pretty cool example of making that happen. And Joe does it in a sarcastic, snarky way. And, it's not perfect. I don't know if these people are going to change everything about themselves at the end of this journey, but they were definitely impacted. And I did think that there were some really good character arcs by the end of the book, which is something a lot of people complain about in First Law, which I have disagreeing opinions about, but I'm not going to get into that here. I just think Abercrombie, even though it is Joe Abercrombie doing Joe Abercrombie things, I did think it was different enough to appease me. And I really just wanted a little bit more of Joe Abercrombie. The audiobook was fantastic, but I actually read most of this physically because I love his prose. I love the writing style of Abercrombie. And when it comes to dialogue, which is probably my favorite part of any book, by the way, like if a book has amazing dialogue, it's almost always going to get a favorable rating for me. It's just something I really enjoy. This was right up there with everything else that he's done dialogue wise. Do I like it more than First Law? I don't even think this is I don't think this question's all that compelling, but I know it's probably what people want to hear. So I will just say at this point, no. But there's only one book. There's like 10 First Law books. And The Blade itself was not the strongest start of any series of all time. In fact, I would say that's probably the biggest hiccup in First Law. And Joe has talked about it in interviews. I think we talked about with Lena's Library. He talked about how, maybe having like a noir type setup and like not really having a lot going on in The Blade itself was not the best hook for a fantasy trilogy. I think he does a better job of a hook in The Devils personally. I also happen to be a big horror fan, and the horror inspiration in this book, like I found it to be almost equal parts like horror monsters or devils as it was like epic fantasy. And the meshing of those two things is something I'm very, very keen on and I would like more of. Red Rabbit, I read a couple of months back and I absolutely loved. It was like a horror Western with a little bit of supernatural elements, a little less on the fantasy side, but still a cool mashup. I think The Devils is a really cool mashup for my taste profile. So this was a home run. It only didn't get overwhelmingly positive for me just because there was a section of the book where I wasn't sure. I wasn't completely bought in like I was in Blade itself, which ironically I think is a weaker book one. I just fell in love with the voices. I had never really read anything with such potent voices at that time in fantasy. So I was very excited about it. But yeah, I thought The Devils was awesome. If you didn't like it, I'm sorry. I don't have much else to say in the way of another perspective outside of the fact that I just had a really good time with this. And if Joe Abercrombie put out like 20 books tomorrow, I would read them all completely offline and be totally okay with just my take on it, which is pretty rare. I'm usually very curious about what other people have to say, but I was not super curious about this one. This one was for me. It was for me, and I'm glad, and I needed it. That's another thing. Books come to you at the right time. This book was the perfect amount of pessimistic to also like oddly hopeful and sarcastic. Like I am I'm not an angry person, but I have been very angry lately about a lot of circumstances. And I feel like Joe Abercrombie has always done something that's vibed with me where he is angry as well. And whether or not his anger is I don't care about any of that. But it's just a sense of like someone acknowledging like the shitty parts of life or the shitty parts of like a system and doing it in a way that you can still like laugh, be like, yeah, it's bad and just laugh. That's what I kind of got out of this book. And it was very therapeutic for me. So that's all that I'm going to stop talking about this book now because it's more just me gushing, but let's hit it and see what people thought about The Devils in the chat. Jana Rose Reed said, I'm so glad you love The Devils. I felt like it was excellent. I thought it was hilarious, tongue-in-cheek, and then with heartfelt moments. Yeah, I definitely was feeling the heartfelt moments. I don't think it's as much as like with the Northmen in First Law, but it was still up there quite a bit. The whole book to me was so cinematic. I usually have a hard time picturing things while reading. I could picture the whole book. Oh my God. Yeah. I've talked time and time again how I can't really picture things. This is one of the few books where I really felt like I could see some of the scenes. And I agree. Cinematic is definitely a word that I would use for this. And also, going back to like the character arcs and these cinematic scenes, we're seeing like bad things happen or things going awry or being completely in disarray. But in that, trauma for the characters. They actually bond, but they bond in such ridiculous ways. Sarah Beth said, I'm at 48% in The Devils. I'm really enjoying it so far. There's just been one scene that went on for a little too long, in my opinion, but it gave great backstory, so there's a trade-off. Yeah, I don't think every single thing was a home run in this book, but overall I really enjoyed it, and I hope that you do as well as you finish it. Jose said, to me, if an author has a voice like Joe's, I like pretty much anything he writes. I love The Devils. I do think it comes down to a lot of that. Like, do you enjoy Joe Abercrombie's tone and voice in his books? If you don't, The Devils, like, I don't think The Devils is going to change your mind about Joe Abercrombie, but I could be wrong about that. Just one question, Jimmy. Do you turn into a monk if you get bitten by a monk? We'll have to find out. There is a monk on BookTube. Mitch said, I liked it for all the wrong reasons. The violence unlocked the primal side I forgot I had in me. Fantastic. QSAQ says, Best Served Cold movie was canceled. I hadn't seen that. Is that true? That's unfortunate if so. I know Rebecca Ferguson, I think, was cast for it. So, but I wouldn't be surprised. I think you're going to see a lot of clamping down in Hollywood, especially around new IP. I just the way things are going right now for the next probably few years, I doubt you see a lot of big risks being taken by studios. Is The Devil written from a bunch of different POVs? Yes, it is. But it had almost like this storytelling vibe to it that I also really enjoyed. Anitha said, you are allowed to read for yourself, Jimmy. Yeah, I know. And you know, there are times I come on here and I have a really balanced opinion, but there's a chance that my experience is really guided to one way. I generally do share that at some point when I talk about the book, but not always. But this was one where I sat down to take notes and I was just like, I'm not going to take notes. I'm just going to kind of rock with it because I was just happy to be happy. So K Fox said, I'm glad you read something for you. Me too. I agree with Anitha. Read for you, Jimmy. I definitely do. I don't want to make it sound like I'm this, I'm just so selfless in my reading. I read things I'm interested in, but I always read it with an open mind. I don't know if I was super open-minded when I read The Devils. So Holly said, yes, I just searched for Abercrombie on your channel. Yeah, I would say Abercrombie is one of my favorite fantasy authors, and I have very little content around him because I'm so satiated by the books personally that I just never end up talking about them very much. Andrew Kraus says, it's funny that you say you don't have First Law content. My introduction to your channel was that First Law video you did with Christian. That's on Christian's channel. But yes, I believe that is where I thought that there is a plot in First Law because people say there's no plot in First Law. Evie said, you did not fail us. Personal praise means just as much, if not more, than objective reviews. Yeah, I will say this. There's not a damn thing objective except describing what the book's about. And I probably get that wrong half the time. This is always just my subjective taste. But thank you, Evie. I appreciate that. On paper, this world setting sounds like the most metal setting in any book ever. I'm so stoked to read it after I finish Farseer. Yeah, I think I would have liked a little bit more world building, and I think I would have probably liked just a couple more details about the world to get a better footing in it. But I also accept the fact that this is an author who did not want to create a map for his secondary fantasy world and was basically forced into it. He just doesn't seem like a guy who gets any pleasure out of that stuff. But maybe he's turning a new leaf. Who knows? So Andrew Krause said, I don't necessarily have a character, but the sorcerer was greatly entertaining. You need to think about that title. Magician, possibly? Jenna Rose Reed said, honestly, yeah, The Devil seems more hopeful and lighthearted than First Law. That's a good point, Jimmy. Well, I'm glad someone else felt that way. Did you like it because it was an alternative history where Carthage dunked on the Romans, razed their fields, and plundered their coffers? How did you know? Was it my I don't like Rome speech earlier? Damn, Joe is for sure going to tarnish those feelings of hope, I bet. I would not be surprised. Though I have heard that the sequel for this is going to be, because it's a trilogy, I'm pretty sure. I've heard that it's going to be like individual tales around the world. So I don't know if are we going to get these characters again? If not, that's fine. I'm always down to meet more Joe Abercrombie characters, but there are some that I would love to see again, for sure. Adrian said, I agree 100% about feeling a touch of hopefulness. Sorry. Though I admit I have been afraid to say that out loud. It's Joe Abercrombie. Yeah, Abercrombie's growing soft in his old age. Yeah, I don't know. I felt like this one was a little bit more fun, where saying First Law is fun will get you put on a list, I think. Joanna Reed said, I will read this at some point. I agree that Abercrombie is so talented with character dynamics and dialogue. Yeah, I would love for you to try this. I think you would like it, Joanna. I have so many, and this Joanna is not one of these people, but I have so many friends that are like, have told me that Abercrombie is one of their favorite authors. And they're like, yeah, I heard it was just mid, so I'll get to it at some point. And I'm just like, that is so sad to me, because I think if someone is a general enjoyer, like, you know, the experience could vary. But if you love Joe Abercrombie, I don't know. I feel like it's like it has to be a high percentage success rate, right? Do you think The Devils is straight gallows humor? It seems First Law still had different humor. Yeah, I think there's a bit of variance in the humor here. And honestly, more humor facing, I would say. I think that this book aims to be a bit more humorous than First Law, though First Law is one of the books that I've laughed out loud the most at. I think The Devils is a little bit more humor first. My plan for now, next read was Demon in White. Should I read The Devils instead? FOMO is real. Carissa, read The Devils. Read The Devils. It's fun. It's fun to have an opinion about something that's being talked about actively, right? I mentioned a monk on BookTube, and Daniel said, yes, but he's a Buddhist monk. They're vegetarians. Not going to bite you anyway. Nut button. Tyson, I am going to give this. I'm glad. So usually it only overwhelmingly positive gets this. I am going to give it to this because I could see this cracking. Like, for just how much I enjoyed this read, I could see myself putting this in my top 10 books of the year. So, oh no, I turned it off. Nut button for The Devils. It's certainly going to be in contention at the end of the year for the top 10. I won't be shocked if it falls out of the top 10, but it's going to be pretty hard for me to, I think, enjoy something as much as I enjoyed this. I've lost 3 subs since this stream started. That was on purpose. That was me on all 3 accounts. I'm subscribing. Jared Henderson says, don't read for you, Jimmy. Read for me. I'm trying. Let's see. PNW says, yeah, he literally roasted an audience member during the Q&A in Seattle who asked him about making a world history book for his new world, and Joe said, bugger off in front of hundreds of people. He's always honest about his feelings, right? And what gets him motivated as a reader. Jake says, he's said most of the characters will stay, some new additions for the next book. I love that. That genuinely excites me. Fantastic. Thank you, Jake, for that information. I hope you're not just lying to me. That'd be pretty funny. I'm currently reading Abercrombie for the first time and am loving it. Love to hear that, Hayward. Fantastic, man. Each book will have a new pope and passenger. Very cool. Very, very cool. Yeah, so, I mean, if you're an Abercrombie fan, I think you should definitely check out The Devils. If you didn't like First Law, I think it's different enough that maybe you could give it a shot if you were like, I want to like it, but I don't. I don't think it's going to change like a ton of people's minds about Joe Abercrombie, though, personally. I've also seen some people saying, you know, he's just a little played out, like he's kind of done all this stuff before. Again, I thought it was different enough to make, you know, Tarantino, I think, has a lot of like layover between his works, but Tarantino always has like a new spin on a movie when it comes out. And I'm not the person who said this, but I've heard Joe Abercrombie be called the Quentin Tarantino of fantasy. I don't entirely disagree with that, especially when it comes to the First Law standalones and how he tried to do something a little bit different. But yeah, it still has that signature Abercrombie stuff, definitely super violent, pretty raunchy at times. But it did feel to me like it had stood alone from the crowd of First Law. If you like alternate history of the Devils, I hope you get to more Tim Powers sometime. Yeah, I read one Tim Powers and really liked it, but haven't got back to it since. He has a ton of books too. I have one that Steven Erickson recommended to me, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was his Vegas one. But I would say this. I enjoy the alternate history of the Devils in the sense that like it's weird to think about it, but it's not like I think that Abercrombie built an amazing alternate history world, if that makes sense. Like if you really wanted some alternative history fantasy, I mean, I would say, is her name Mary Gentle? Ash, The Secret History. Sorry, I almost forgot. Ash, The Secret History. I've only read part 1 of that, but that is way, way more in the weeds and pretty phenomenal, even though I like that book. I didn't love that book just because of some of the earlier on choices, but like as far as a alternate history go, that one's pretty interesting. So Jose said, I think I'm going to start Wolf Hall. I've never seen anyone preach a book this hard. Jared is trolling you. It is quite good. I've never read a book written like it. It's one of the most unique books I've ever read in my entire life. I got 60% of the way through and had paused for too long, and I'm going to go back and finish it at some point. It was not like a hard DNF. Jared's just giving me a hard time. I love that comparison. They're both the best in their own fields at dialogue. I would probably agree with that. Holly said, Abercrombie is funny, so I'll always like him. He does make me laugh. He said the next book is mostly stationary and not travel. I do love a good travel book. Okay. Maybe Joe's putting out some mixed signals out there. I can see someone saying it's formulaic, but it's really good formula, and Abercrombie can take my money any day. A lot of successful authors do have a formula. I don't feel like this book was... Again, I don't think... like the formula as in the ingredients are the same with a little bit of a twist, but plot-wise, I still think that it's fairly unique from First Law, maybe, I think. Samwise said, I'm reading Power of Vegas novel, Last Call, next month. Yeah, that's the one Erickson recommended to me, and I have it. I also, I bought a bunch of books off eBay, and I can't remember which one it was, but my name on eBay was like Jimmy Nuts, right? So I ordered them, and the person who's selling the books recognized my name and sent me a bunch of Tim Powers books along with the books I ordered, which I can't remember which books I actually ordered. And they said, hey, dude, I watch your channel, love it. I think you'll like these. So all those Tim Powers books I need to get to as well. So Tim Powers is certainly someone I'm going to read more of. I just never seem to I need to prioritize him probably a little bit more. I liked Anubis Gates. It was good. When are we getting Erickson back on? October, just before Witness Book 2 release? Maybe post. Maybe we can have a discussion. That would be great. Erickson's a wonderful guy and super generous with his time and his knowledge. He's great. Yeah. Andre said, Tim Powers, I read the Anubis Gates, and I think I'll never give him another chance. Oh, man. Oh, no. I'm not trolling. It rules. I wrote passages by hand just to enjoy Mantel's writing. Happy to educate you, Jimmy. Thank you, Jared. Someone's got to help me out here. Last one for the night. I only read 4 books. Is actually a collection of 3 novellas, and this was the Patreon book of the month last month, selected from Nicholas's pick. Adrian Tchaikovsky, Terrible Worlds Revolutions. This is one of the worst book titles of all time. But it's really just a reason give purpose to binding up 3 of his novellas, which is Ironclads, Firewalkers, and Ogres. And I think that the main message of these novellas is eat the rich. I think it is criticizing the fact that people who are in positions of power or in a position of wealth, when they do not act with a certain level of integrity, can really create some terrible worlds, but also create some revolutions. So I see where he got the name from. I just think it's a horrendous title. So Adrian Tchaikovsky, I liked, what was it? Children of Time. I loved that book. I had a great time with it. Thought it was really interesting. I did not like Cage of Souls. It's one of probably my most disappointing books I read because the premise is amazing and I didn't feel like he did much with it at all. I thought it was kind of a mess personally. I know some people love that book, but I wanted more from it. Especially like a Dying Earth type feel. I was hoping we'd get a little bit more of that apocalypse stuff in there, and the prison stuff was sick, but he didn't really focus on that too much after a certain point, whatever. So up and down, this dude writes more books than Brandon Sanderson. Honestly, he puts Sanderson to shame. One of the most prolific modern fantasy authors, sci-fi authors, just a dude that's putting in work, has a love for the game. He's a huge fan of China Miéville. He, definitely, you can tell, I think, has a lot of inspiration from the ones who have come before him. And that's awesome. The thing I have to tell you about this author is even through 3 novellas, with all the same theme roughly, I thought that he had a great range of approaching each story with a certain style or voice, or just the way that he brought things together. It just felt different. Like if you told me all 3 of these were written by a different author, I could probably believe that. And especially if you compare it to Cage of Souls and Children of Time. So I'm always suspect of an author who writes a ton, to be honest with you. I just am. I think he could be the exception. I'm sure there's some stinkers out there. But these 3 novellas, 2 of them I will say I was mid on one. Basically, I was apathetic towards one. I liked one of them, and then I adored one of them. And I'm going to say the one that I honestly just felt was fine was Firewalkers. I thought the premise was really interesting in this like almost inferno world. And of course, it's the kids that have to kind of keep this back, and the rich are just enjoying their time. It sounds cooler than it was. It just didn't do much for me. I also read it last, which I think was a huge issue. The one I liked was Ironclads. And Ironclads has like full-blown like sci-fi mech suits, of course, for the wealthy. And the corporation, we're at a point in the future where corporations are like sponsoring military groups in wars. And it's, of course, it's making light of the industrial military complex. IKEA has a say in this. They are sponsoring some of this. Like the conflicts between the nations were so weird. And I'm like, I wonder how it all got to this point, which the details are a little bit sparse because it's a novella. I will say this. I've never been a big fan of like mech suits. I'm just not into it. I do not like Gundam Wing. I always hated Gundam Wing. I don't like Transformers or Pacific Rim or any of that. Is Pacific Rim mechs? I feel like it was. I don't like any of that stuff. Just not my thing. But for not liking that aesthetic, I actually thought that this was pretty awesome and entertained me throughout the entire thing. The one thing that did annoy me, and it's actually not a negative, but it's written in a manner where you really feel like you are listening or reading an account from a person in the world that is just constantly reminding you of what the person and their crew is saying. So they repeat the name. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but it's just like, oh, so-and-so always said this, so-and-so always said this. And it did it so many times in the first 2 chapters that it was annoying as all hell, even though I think it's actually probably the right thing to do for the character that he was portraying. So I'm not saying it's a negative universally. It just really annoyed the piss out of me. It had to annoy other people as well. With all that said, between the commentary on the topics that he's going for, and also kind of revealing how this combat works, which of course, when the rich want to send their sons in or daughters in to play in the warfield, they're protected. And there's this passage near the beginning about how once swords were taken out and you could be killed in an instant from 300 yards away. Well, it turns out that, you know, the billionaire son maybe doesn't want to play warrior anymore, and kind of inspects that. But we also get a little bit of the other side of that and realize that there's levels all the way up. And the ending of it was pretty good. I thought it was a solid conclusion. Not the greatest novella I've ever read, but the biggest takeaway I had from this, and this is what I was talking about, feeling like he has really been a student of the game. Like he's someone who's read all of the stuff, has a retro feel specifically in this story. And I'm sure someone out there will disagree with me, but I've been reading a ton of George R. R. Martin's short stories from the 70s and 80s. Been going through Dream Song. I've been doing this for months and kind of reading all the way through it and then hoping to maybe make some sort of magnum opus George R. R. Martin video. But I felt like Ironclads, even though it wasn't my favorite novella, I felt like it had like that early like 70s, 80s George R. R. Martin feel where it almost felt like someone was telling you a futuristic story next to a campfire. I like that a lot. I like the character voices. They were distinct. He got them over in a really quick amount of time for a novella. And because of that, I think I ended up liking this more than I probably should have, just not being a big fan of the mech stuff. So yeah, Ironclads was pretty good. Ogres, which is definitely, for me, I mean, it's one of the things that people talk about the most from this author and has been, I think most people I know have given it 5 stars. Ogres is about ogres ruling over humans and the history of the world and how this came to be. Again, the aristocracy not acting with integrity, being downtrodden on, and this clear leveling system of these people are better than these people. Same themes. This novella was so good. It had a lot of stuff, and I can't say much about it. It's really short. You should just read it. Honestly, you should just read it. And you don't have to get this collection. Like you can just get the ogres. Like it's individually sold. It is short. It's like 100 something pages, I think. But my goodness, I thought it was fantastic. It tickled the parts of my brain that I'd like to go into when it comes to like fantasy and sci-fi. And it had all of that. It had a crazy, crazy ending. This month was full of great endings. The Ogres is right up there with Will of the Many as far as like endings that were kind of like, holy shit, like this is nuts. Dude, Ogres was fantastic. The only complaint I have about this book is there is a section of the book that I found so interesting, and it ends and we just start on a different plot point. Like we just start the next part of the plot, and it's because it's a novella. You can tell he had to like switch gears, because in a novella or a short story, you got to get in and you got to get out. You have a limited amount of things to work with. And I did feel like the one transition, the story was actually going in a way that I was like, oh, like it's well done, but it's not what I wanted, which is subjective for my taste. But then he takes that piece that I was kind of like let down that he went this way with it so fast, and he gave me an ending that was unbelievable. An ending I will never forget. I mean, absolutely incredible. I thought it was incredible. My only real complaint, this Ogres could have been a novel. He made some really cool characters. He set up a lot of social dynamics in this book between the Ogres and the humans and the history of the world, which is the thing that I was saying kind of like tickled my brain. It's the history stuff that was in this book. Oh, man. Oh, dude. I loved it so much. Ugh, it was so good. So for me, my only big complaint is that I did feel like it took kind of a right turn real quick at one of the plot points, even though it was logical. It's just not where I really wanted it to go. And for me, I just think it could have been a novel. I think he could have expanded on this and it would have been absolutely just as good. This is one of the few times where I think that there should have been more book. Way more book. I would have definitely read a 500-page book about this, especially with the characters. I thought it would be great. With that said, in the short amount of time, he really did get over the character relationships and the character growth and the arcs, giving us real history. These characters existed before I read the first page. I believe that. Ogres was awesome. And if this was a review just for Ogres, it would be overwhelmingly positive. So Ogres itself, I got to quit turning off the nut button. Damn it. Ogres itself gets the nut button. Ironclads was good. I didn't really like Firewalkers. It's not that I hated it. It was fine. It was fine. So unfortunately, this only gets a very positive, and so much of that very positive is the Ogres. I wish I could just give the whole thing that, but it did come as a collection. It's what was put on the wheel, so I have to judge it as a collection of the novellas. But I'm telling you, it's not fair because Ogres is just that damn good, in my opinion. So, whoo boy, let me tell you what, Adrian Tchaikovsky, definitely someone I'm going to read more from. And wouldn't it be freaking nice to love an author who writes that much? Because it doesn't happen all the time, especially in fantasy for me. So let's go to the chat and see who has read this collection. I know a lot of people have read Ogres, but I don't know about the other ones. Ogres and Elder Race, probably my two top science fiction fantasy novellas. I didn't know Elder Race was a novella. I thought it was a full book. Andre said, read City of Last Chances earlier this year and really liked it. I read like the first few chapters of it and realized that it wasn't the right time for me to read it. I didn't really know what to expect, but I think that's going to be one I'm going to really enjoy whenever I'm in the mood for it. Elder Race sounds really interesting to me. Only thing I know is a lot of people really, really like it. I would like to know more. Emil says, I am suspicious of authors that crank out books at this speed. Hey, I'm with you. Like when Sanderson published like 17 books in a year, I know it was probably like 5. I was just like, and I felt vindicated, me personally, because I didn't really like any of the secret novels very much. So I've always been suspect to people who move at a blistering pace. I don't know. Writing is really hard. This seems to be a guy, I don't know if he does much else. He certainly doesn't groom his eyebrows. I don't know if you guys have seen it. Reader's Journey said, yes, mech suits. Hey, boom. You would love it. Firewalkers is the only one I've read, but I'm looking forward to reading the other two. Oh, man, you have got to check out the Ogres. Oh, my goodness. Samwise says, Jimmy doesn't like Pacific Rim Heresy. I know, I suck. Ooh, I've been hit or miss with him, and I love his prose, but I love his prose every time. Welcome, Murphy. Good to see you, as always. I think that you would like Ogres. I think you would like it, and it's very short. I would love to hear your thoughts about it. But he has been hit or miss with me, too. You know, Cage of Souls being, I kind of mentioned it earlier, but definitely one of my most disappointing books I've ever read. But he's trending up between Children of Time and this. It's going up. And also, Murphy, I believe you were the very first person to recommend me City of Last Chances. And I think it was in this very room. And it was very hot. It was around this time last year, I think. You got to try some of the other Gundam shows. See, the problem with Gundam is that it was always on before or after Dragon Ball Z on Cartoon Network. So I always was mad that it wasn't Dragon Ball Z. So it's like Sailor Moon, same thing. I was like, ugh, this should be Dragon Ball Z. Why are they playing these stupid other shows? So yeah, I know it's very childish of me, but the Tyrant Philosophers might be my favorite. Tchaikovsky, Curmudgeon God is pretty great. He has so many books. I need someone to like, I need a flow chart of like, you like the ogres? Read this. You hate a Cage of Soul? Read this. So somebody make that and send it to me. I will pay you in arcade tokens or something. Oh, hey, thank you for the super sticker, super chat here. Spot Center. Always love to see you. Said character appearing from behind a cloud saying, hiya. Good to see you. Been supporting me far, far longer than I've had a YouTube channel, and I'm always happy to see that name pop up. So thank you for the super sticker. It's very, very generous of you, and I hope you and the fam are doing well. Ogres is a genre bender. I would agree. Those are some of my favorite books, it seems. I'm putting an order in for Terrible Worlds and Ken Scholes right now on Thrift Books. Very, very based of you. Love to see that. Watching 880 Wrestling from Pittsburgh with my son saying hi. It's fantastic. I love to see that. Let's see here. My chat, I got it messed up for some reason. This is why Elder Race is the perfect novella. Okay. Are you saying because it's a full book? Is that what you're saying? Sick eyebrow burn. The Final Architecture is a sci-fi series that I have definitely been very interested in. I probably need to read the premise and figure out when I want to do that, because I'm reading a sci-fi book right now that it's so good. We will talk about it here in just a little bit after the Patreon pick of the month that's about to happen. Get your popcorn ready for that. Yeah, he needs to Dracarys those eyebrows. Or maybe not. It makes them stand out, right? Jimmy doesn't listen to Alan or me, confirmed Tyrant Philosophers. I really do think Murphy was the first person to personally recommend it to me. Not a general recommendation, but like personally came to me and was like, hey, I think you need to read this, I think. Madam Book said, the first thing I said to Tchaikovsky when I met him is disappointing your eyebrows. He does groom them. Good to know. Very good. Jimmy just asked Mindlin. He's literally read all of his works. Okay, very cool. Tchaikovsky said, flow chart, loving ogres, go to Dogs of War. I have heard that before. Mindlin's going to make me a chart. Dude, if you make a chart, I will share it out on my community tab. Because I think a lot of people probably feel the way I do. Maybe we should read Elder Race together. You just tell me the time and place. I am down. Especially if it's not long, I'm totally in. Writing the Hive Ogres, I would like to get back to him sooner rather than later. So let's make it happen. I would love that. We can chat about it. It'll be great. I love the Final Architecture. A lot of praise for that. Reader's Journey said, are you still reading Jacob Dezoe? Soon, I forget. It'll be read this year. I just don't know when. Could be near the end of the summer. Could be in the fall. Could be next month. It'll just depend. I know I was supposed to read that with Alan, but honestly, I'm going to try to dissuade Alan from reading it because I don't think it's the right David Mitchell for him to start with. I was not aware of the graphic content in the book, and I just feel like he won't love it. Bex's book buddy says, if you're going to pay in arcade tokens, first I need to know you can earn them. Well, I'm a pinball master, okay? Shad said, my popcorn is ready for the Patreon pick. It's cold, though. I've been waiting an hour. Belltube's going to try Elder Race. We're gonna have the biggest booktube read along for this. It's going to be incredible. Hey, shout out to all you people here. There's over 120 people here tonight. I just want to say I appreciate that very much. And also, I believe the tornado warning has passed, so I am in fact not going to be in the Twisters the second sequel, the third one, which is great. I've been watching a lot of tornado footage online. Very scary. So let's do the Patreon pick of the month, folks. Let's do it. As always, I'm going to select a ball. The number will coordinate with a pick from one of my wonderful patrons. And I will then have to read that book for this month. If I call your number and you have not changed your pick since I've read the book or you've already been selected, I will just select someone else and move on. Unfortunately, I have to keep this entertaining, and no one wants to see me going, well, I'll PM them and ask them. We might be able to come to an agreement. If you don't change your pick, I'll definitely message you. But remember, if you're a patron, please change your pick. The Google Forms always post on Patreon once a month. So folks, whole lot of picks here. Before the live, I shuffled these. I actually took the balls out and I shuffled them left to right. I mixed them up. I've had a couple people say, man, you picked that ball twice in the last 365 days, that same number, that you need to shake them up a little bit more. I'm trying my best to shuffle these. But I took them all out, literally shook them around, put them back in, shook them again. So they are definitely shuffled, okay? But without further ado, let's get to the Patreon pick of the month for what I'll be reading in June. And again, shout out to everyone that supported the channel. It means the world to me. It obviously supports what I do, and it allows me to do really cool things like this program I'm using, camera and everything, but also just, it's just nice to know people enjoy what I do. So thanks. Appreciate you. All right, and the winner is, for the month of June, going deep. Oh, a ball fell out. I have to take the ball that fell out, right? It would be number 40, which I have to move my screen over. So you guys will know before me. Rigged, confirm. I don't even know how I would go about rigging this. So number 40 is Stromboli B, The Battle of the Five Edits. Okay, this is, I never thought this would happen. I never thought his number would be picked. So Stromboli Bones, okay. Stromboli Bones did not pick a book, and I actually approved this. This is a one-off. I can't believe I picked his number. All right, so here's the thing. Stromboli Bones, great dude. Love the guy. He has made a supercut of the Hobbit movies out of just love for the game and the hatred for the Hobbit edit, or the Hobbit movies. He thinks they could be better. He did a fan edit of the movies, and it actually got a huge following online. It won like a fan edit award, and a lot of people say it's the best way of consuming the Hobbit movies. He asked me, he said, could I put that on the patron list? And I said, you know what? Yeah, why not? I like Strom a lot. He's a good dude. Also, his name's Stromboli. I mean, you can't get much better than that. So I have to now watch what I assume will be a multiple-hour extravaganza of a fan edit from Stromboli of The Hobbit. And I'm kind of pumped for it, but I never thought I would draw the ball. I don't know why. I just was like, oh, the chances are so low. Like, yeah, you can put on the patron, Will. Well, look at me. Look at me. I will report back on what I think about it. I will. This is a one-off. I'm gonna select a book though. I am actually going to select a book. So we're bringing back out the Raffler. What do we say? One more time. One more time. We got to get a book. I can watch the movie, but I have to have a book. So. Dude, not selecting a book. So bad. All right, I'm trying not to let one fall out. It fell into my lap too, which I don't know if you could see, so I could see how someone would think. Like if I was gonna rig it though, I would not have picked that because I forgot it was there, to be honest. All right, so I have a new ball selected, and it is number, I gotta bring up the slide again, sorry. 51. Number 51, and the winner is Derry, whichever next book in a series you won't otherwise get to. God damn it. There's got to be an audit of this patron list. I got to get a titled book on here. All right? Derry, I have an idea. but I don't want to pledge to it. I'm either going to read a sequel that I wanted to get to, or I will read, she's a huge Terry Pratchett fan, Derry is, and maybe I will finally read the rest of Guards. I think I can manage that. Well, I'm drawing another one. Dude. I've literally been trying to get away from doing multiple picks, but like... All right, let's go. If I pick not a titled book that I haven't read yet, I'm painting these walls red. I'm just saying. All right, I'm going to try to go to the left side. I try to go to the right and the middle. I read that today and was surprised you never mentioned it. Thank you, Mrs. Nuts. Murphy said, your Patreon is sabotaging you. I think they enjoy my pain. I think that is it. It's not even pain. It's just like, I just try to draw once. You know, I just want to draw once. It's all good problems. I got to pull up the Patreon slide once again. Jimmy now wishing the tornado hit. You're damn right. Number 83, which is Zach Ends The Wandering Inn. Listen. It just thundered outside. I hope the next strike of lightning hits me in the head. I just pulled the longest book in history. Congratulations, Zach. The Wandering Inn. The thing about lives is like, sometimes you get these moments, like legitimately random selection of 3 picks, and they were all a fucking meme. It was all a meme. The whole thing was a meme. My life is a meme. Bro. All right, first off, I'm not reading all of The Wandering Inn. Zach, by the way, congratulations. It's super popular. I guess I will get a taste of Wandering Inn. I had said if I ever selected Wandering Inn, there's no way I could read all of it, obviously. But I will read the first, like wherever the first break is, the general consensus. I don't know if there's parts, but like I'm only going to be able to read a reasonable amount, okay? But, I mean, Jesus Christ. All right. Murphy said, my patrons picked The Wandering Inn for me this month. We're reading it together. I feel like we have all the buddy reads now, which is fantastic. It is destined. Well, me and Murphy are buddy reading The Wandering Inn. Maybe I should do the one bite book review. Maybe I should just read the first page and decide if I'm going to continue. Shad said, my popcorn is running out, Jimmy. The Wandering Inn. Like, you couldn't draw it up, man. Yeah, proof is not rigged. Yeah, I wouldn't do this to myself. So Derry's pick, she obviously said I could read a sequel that I would not otherwise get to. I may take her up on that, or I might read Guards because I know she would love if I read a Terry Pratchett book, which, you know, they're not very long. But the thing is like June's one of the few months this year. June and July have some actual like scheduled reads. And in June, I'm hoping to read Prophet Song, which is short and a Booker winner. I think I won the Booker. Yeah, I won the Booker by Paul Lynch. And I'm reading it with Yolanda from StoryTube, my great friend Yolanda. So I was like, oh, I want to kind of be a little bit lighter this month. But like, I got to watch a 17,000 hour Hobbit edit, which will be great. I'm going to have to probably read a Discworld book. And then I'm going to have to read The Wandering. I drew the longest book in existence. I got stuff to do. Lose Theron Teletubby. Again, phenomenal name. It would be so good if he got Wandering Inn. This is your fault. This is your fault, Lose Theron. If I didn't like the prologue of Eye of the World so much, I'd ban you. But I do really like the prologue of Eye of the World. I'm dead. Freaking called it. Yeah. Well, this is why we do it live, dude. How have we both picked that? Yeah, Mrs. Nuts actually also selected that during our Chatting with Nuts episode, and then she just decided no. Jimmy's an entertainer. It is rigged carny bullshit. Bro, I would not rig it for this. Worst lit RPG coming from me. BellTube is the official source for all lit RPGs. Been reading it for over a decade. Most of us didn't even know it existed until this year. This is just the best thing ever. That's one way of describing it. I genuinely love that people are just having a blast. Kev is demanding a repick. He's saying repick. I got to stick with it, man. Zach picked it, and it is what it is. Yeah, definitely not just read the first volume. Is the audiobook free on Audible? Because aren't they releasing them in audiobooks? Isn't the first audiobook like 55 hours? My life is a meme. Jimmy Nuts after avoiding a tornado but being rolled over by a raffle. It's one of the better comments of the year, honestly. The first volume is still 1,000 pages of dreck. I mean, I do reserve. Yeah, Emil says, isn't the first volume 1,200 pages? Emil, also, am I saying your name right? Let me know, please. I don't want to mispronounce it. Use the audio. I'm going to have to. I am happy for Zach, by the way. Shad also had this as his patron pick, so he's also sharing a win here. I'm going to give it a genuine try, by the way. Like, I know I'm crushed and my month is ruined just by the sheer amount of pressure now I have to read all this. But I will say this. I'm going to give it a fair shot. I do reserve the right to DNF, but if you guys know me, I hardly ever DNF within 20%. Like, I always try to read at least 20-25% of a book before putting it down, and I don't DNF too often. I DNF more often than I used to. There's some books I wish I would have DNF'd, but I will not DNF it just to get out of it. I'll give it a fair shot. A lot of people love The Wandering Inn. Maybe I will too. I don't know. I did hear there's chess in it. That's the only thing I know about is there's chess. I don't know how much I like chess, but I don't know how much I'll like chess in a book. Please don't judge it off the first page. It does get better. If you do struggle in the beginning, try the audiobook. Yes, I understand how this sounds. As long as you understand how it sounds, I've done it to other people too. It's fine. I want a fourth pick because this is getting better and better. I have such a packed month. Magica, The Wandering Inn. I would agree with that. I would love to read some Clive Barker. You know what also won the Booker, Jimmy? Would it be Wolf Hall? Don't encourage Jared, all right? We do not need more Jared in the chat. We don't need that. Andre said, just read Prophet Song. That's a heavy one. We're worth it. Prepare your heart. Okay, I did not know that. Did not know that. Mitch with the $13.99 super chat. Mitch, thank you. You didn't have to do that. Dig my ball out right now and dumpster these other picks. Mitch, I can't do that. What is Mitch's pick? Mrs. Nuts, look up if you're here, which I assume you are, look up Mitch's pick. I just want to know what it is. Because I feel like it's Warlock or something like that, and I have no idea what it is, which makes it very intriguing. Mitch, no guarantees. I can't start doing on-demand super chat reads, or my life will be complete and utter chaos. But Mitch, thank you for the super chat. You did not need to do that. At least they're off your list now. Thank God. Oh, Strom's Hobbit edit is only 4.5 hours. That's actually very doable. Thank goodness. Ishin said, I opened the stream right as the picks were being made. I am the catalyst. Oh, no. Eric Blinn said, guards, read along. I'll go buy it tomorrow. Don't tempt me. I think as long as Derry doesn't change her mind, there's a lot of sequels I would like to read, but I would like to do something that would delight Derry because Derry was my first ever patron. I think I've had a Patreon for 5 years. She was my very first patron and has always been super supportive. So I want to do something that would delight her. And I think as long as I like guards, if I don't like it, yeesh. If it weren't live, Jimmy would have respun. You're damn right I would have. No, I'm just kidding. You should have stopped after 2 rolls, Jimmy. I needed a titled book. Okay? I needed a titled book. Mrs. Nutt said, I did read a patron pick, just not that one. Yeah, I immediately said, you can't do Wandering Inn. It's just, at your pace of reading, it would be the end of you. You would read until you die. Lucas Williams said, good luck with that. Thanks, man. I appreciate that. And it was the 30th of May when Jimmy's channel died. Brother, this channel has been in rigor mortis for a year. which is a shame because I think these are pretty entertaining if I do say so myself. The man who made the pool shall read the book. Well said, Rodrigo. A lot of respect for that quote. It is free on Audible. Huge win. 48 hours for volume 1 of the audiobook. Is it Michael Kramer? Because if Michael Kramer 48 hours is like everyone else's 24 hours. I hope it's not Michael Kramer because I don't want to listen to Michael Kramer, but I hope it's Michael Kramer for that. Just that. It gets good on book 12. I love to hear that. That is fantastic. 2 spot from Samwise said, money for the Guinness you'll need. Samwise, you are so correct about this. Thank you for the 2 spot. And also just telling me to get a Guinness. I appreciate that. Can we get a 4th fake pick just to see what it would be? That would be so dirty of me. Reader's Journey said, I read the first few pages forever ago. It was genuinely fun, like somebody writing and just having a good time. That doesn't sound so bad until I hear that it's 1,200 pages. And then I'm like, I read Sanderson's Having Fun book this past December. I'm wary of 1,200 page books at this point, I think. Belltube said, I will if you finish Wandering In and don't get back to Wolf Hall. Oh, you will laugh your ass off if you finish Wandering In and don't get back to Wolf Hall. I can't finish Wolf Hall this month is actually legit just. So one more pick, get the people. I can't. I actually can't. I have so much stuff going on in life that it's just not possible. I'll read some guards. Okay, so I think for Derry's pick, I'm going to do guards. People seem like they would really like to see that. And I've been wanting to read it forever. I started a while back on a vacation, and I actually thought I lost the book, and it turns out it was in my book bag for 6 months, which is kind of funny. I've been slowly rereading guards for research purposes. It could have been worse. One of the picks could have been Morning Glory Milking Farm. What? What in tarnation are you talking about, dude? Super chat was just for the love of the game. Hey, what are you going to do? What are you going to do? You know, do it on 2x speed. I don't know. I got to catch all the world building. Guards is great. The narrator for Wandering In is really good. That's cool. Oh, Daniel even says the narrator is actually really great. Andre Parsnow is her name. She sounds like a full cast as a single person. That's really cool. Very cool. Bell2 said, Jimmy and I bought plots next to each other for our channels. Yes, in the graveyard of YouTube. Absolutely. No, not Michael Kramer. Word count is a slight 454K. So basically like an Oathbringer or Rhythm of War. Can I tell you at what part it hooked me? Don't tell me what happens, but can you give me like percentage in? And I will try to read to that point, unless if it's at like 90%. I can't guarantee I'll make it all the way there. Just looked at your Patreon, and I think it's a crime second tier and called the Nuts Watch. Actually, pretty fair point. I'm surprised HBO hasn't given me a copyright strike for that, though. Solid point. Maybe I'll make a change. Morning Glory Milking Farm is a certified Bees classic. God bless Bees. Miss her. Morning Glory Milking Farm is the cream of the crop. What are we doing? What are we doing? You know, you can read it next year like Alan. Yeah, I could be like Alan and draw patron picks and just never read them. But I've DNF patron picks before, but I've never not read a patron pick, which I'm pretty proud of, doing this for a long time. The light just falling out of Jimmy's eyes. Maybe I'll just take a break next month. No, I'm kidding. I won't. I love the patron pick. One, it is very entertaining. And 2, some of my favorite books I've read in the last 4 years have actually come from it. Will any of these be? I don't know. Maybe that Hobbit edit's just going to be sick, and I'm just going to absolutely love it. I've never watched a fan edit of anything, by the way. So this is all new territory for me. I do know, like, generally, it's accepted as like it's either number 1 or number 2 of edits of Hobbits, which apparently there's a lot of edits of the Hobbit movies out there because there's a lot of good stuff in there. Just maybe they didn't come together. Also, I've been informed that about 20 to 30%. I will try to absolutely read at least half of Wandering In. If I don't finish volume 1 in a month, don't hold it against me. I am going to try my damnedest. I said Wandering In volume 2 is 61 hours. So you have lots to look forward to. Dang, I kind of want to read Wandering In now. Hey, jump on the bandwagon. Me and Murphy are going to be reading it. So you have 2 people to watch go through this ridiculous experience together. Why not join us? Give it a go. It's free on Audible. I think it's free online because it was a web novel. Which, by the way, I know people who are fans of web novels always get a little annoyed because Wandering In is the one that everyone talks about. But there are so many other web novels that people think are like really high quality. So like people get upset if someone doesn't like Wandering In, they won't try any of their web novels. I kind of understand that. How do you watch the edit? I got to ask Strom. I actually am not totally sure. I had to figure that out. Okay. Why the hell did I look up what Morning Glory Milking Farm was? I'm not going to do that one. I'm going to just let that percolate in my brain. And I'll try to make up my own image, I guess. Anyways, so in June, I'll be reading part 1 of the Wandering In. I'll read Guards for Derry's pick. I also am planning on reading Prophet Song with Yolanda. And I would ask her to move it to July, but I can't. We've been talking about reading this book for a year. And by the way, if you don't know who Yolanda is, she's from StoryTube. She's been on here with Carlos before, two of my very best friends. And she also put out a review of Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor that I really want to read that book. I read like the first 10% when I picked it up, and I really want to get back to it. I was hoping to do it maybe in June. But Yolanda did a review of that book that I thought was excellent. So you should go check that out. So I got to read Prophet Song. So Prophet Song, Wandering In, Guards, that's 3 books. I also am about to finish Childhood's End by Arthur C. Clarke, which was recommended during the Bell 2 episode of Chatting with Nuts, which, by the way, top 3 episode of all time. You should really go back and watch the last episode of Chatting with Nuts. I thought it was absolutely ridiculous. It was so much fun. We were out of pocket. It was great. But Childhood's End, really short. I'm just going to tell you right now, that's getting the nut button. I don't even understand how it couldn't, to be honest. So Childhood's End, but that's almost done. I probably could have finished it if I really tried today. So that'll be 5 books. And then I started The Passage by Justin Cronin, mainly because I have just really been in a post-apocalyptic mood forever. And I've heard that it's a great post-apocalyptic novel. I know a lot of people are not so hot on the second half of the book. I don't know. I'm really digging it. I think it would take a lot for me to not enjoy the second half. Also, in a bit of a vampire mood. I'm not going to lie to you. Between watching From, which they aren't vampires, but it feels like vampires. And then I just went and watched Sinners in theaters, which, by the way, phenomenal movie. I really loved it. It's bonkers. Crazy movie. Just out of this world, really. Almost a musical in some ways. And it has vampires in it. I've just been in kind of a vampire mode. And I know there's at least one other thing I read or something recently that had vampires in it. Oh, The Devils. Had one vampire. So I'm kind of in the vampire mode. And so far, The Passage, I'm probably about 40% of the way or 30% of the way through The Passage, and I am loving it so far. I really think Justin Cronin has just a way of kind of like sucking you in and getting you immersed. And he just has characters that, I don't know, I grew attached to the characters so quickly. So The Passage is going great. But the thing is The Passage is a monster of a book. So I was thinking, okay, well, I can listen to that all the way through the month, and then that'll be my big book for the summer. But now I have The Wandering In. I'm not putting off The Passage. I'm liking it far too much. So I will start The Wandering In once. Well, I have to sync with Murphy. We'll see when she's reading it. But I really want to finish The Passage before I dedicate any time to another chunker. So I got to figure that out. So that's like 5 or 6 books. I had a couple other ones. I was really hoping to read Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. I think that's her name. I really wanted to read Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor, but there's too much going on. So it's going to have to get pushed to July. Heads up. Obviously, I'm now going into next month, and I probably should cover this on the next wrap up, but I am going to be starting a kind of a read along, I guess. A lot of people in my Discord are going to be reading it. I think at least 3 or 4 or 5 people. They're going to read with me, and that's going to be The Rune Lords by David Farland. I'm going to start that in July. Been really wanting to try him out. David Farland is kind of an icon in the fantasy genre that has been more forgotten. I laud Tad Williams a lot of being like your favorite fantasy author's favorite author. I think David Farland is also probably one of those guys. I know Sanderson was massively inspired by him and talks very highly of him. I believe he took his creative writing class. Might even be the class that Sanderson teaches now, if I'm not mistaken. So Rune Lords has kind of 2 arcs, and I think the first arc is 3 or 4 books, and then there's a second arc. I'm not going to read the second arc. enough people that I know and trust have told me it's probably not worth my time. Kind of like other series. But I'm going to read the first like arc. So 3 or 4 books of Rune Lords, and I'm hoping to do one a month. So July, August, September, and then if it's for October. So if that's something you're interested in, that's not going to be June. That's going to be, I'll be talking about it in next month's In a Nutshell video. So I'm just trying to say it ahead of time in case people want to read along with us. I think that'd be really, really cool. It's not like an official read along. I don't really have those on the channel necessarily, but if you want to make plans to start a cool epic fantasy series that's been a somewhat forgotten, that I think has a really cool magic system from what I heard of, or I shouldn't say magic system, but like the world building is really cool. You could join us in July. That is Rune Lords, The Rune Lords by David Farland. Also has a great cover. So 5 or 6 books, going into June and with life the way it is going to be an absolute nightmare. But we're going to get through it, and I hope I love all of them. I really do. Wandering in Book to Win is going to be my comment under all vids from henceforth. I appreciate that. Derry, good to see you. Derry is in the chat. I'm no longer splitting attention on here and the indie author talk on Talking Story. Talking Story ran against me on a Friday night. Who does he think he is? This is the Friday Night Wars, and I got to tell you, the Mintons are not going to win this one. I will one-star Discovery. I will. Don't tempt me. Derry, you won one of the Patreon picks, and your pick was a sequel that you would not otherwise get to. And while I enjoy the sentiment, I've decided instead I will read a new Discworld book, and I will read Guards because I feel like that would delight you. So I'll be reading Guards this month as your Patreon pick. Hooray! I can't believe the Mittens ran against me on a Friday. What are we doing here? Derry, you need to watch the Patreon picks. Yes, you should go back. They were something. The first chapter with Chris, I just saw half of you all at Talking Story stream. I love that everyone is supporting everyone. Well, you picked Talking Story first, which is, we're going to have to talk about that. We're going to have to really, I'm going to have to process this drama. I'll have to get back, and I'm hoping a moment of joy. I think you'll be very, very happy. A Reader's Journey said, I'm in the middle of Claire in the Sun right now. My first Ishiguro, really digging it. Not sure what's next. I love to hear that so much, dude. That makes me so happy. I also know that you enjoyed David Mitchell, so you're just like on my best list right now, dude. Brian Rogers said, I read about 1/3 of the passage, loved it, but got distracted with other stuff and had to set it down. Would like to get back to it. Yeah, it's been like my background read because it's so big and like I had other stuff I wanted to get done. But boy, oh boy, do I want it to be like the only thing I focus on because it is awesome and vampires are hot. Vampires whack, werewolves snack. I like that. It's pretty funny. The Way of the Wolf is a post-apocalyptic vampire novel. Also my Patreon pick. You should spin again. Eric, letting me know that is what that is actually a really good way of getting me to read it quicker, even if it doesn't get picked, to be honest, because that sounds very intriguing to me. 30 Days of Night. Did anybody remember that movie? I always think about that movie a lot. It's one of my favorite vampire movies of all time. I think now Sinners would be my favorite vampire movie of all time, I think. But 30 Days of Night's certainly up there. There's a lot of really good vampire movies. There's a found footage one. I'm not going to go into it. There's a found footage one of these kids like in Europe, and they don't realize that they've been bitten by a vampire. It's actually, I love found footage movies. I don't care, like my guilty pleasure. I can't remember what it was called, but it was so good. I loved it. Dylan's Book Nook says, I read The Passage years ago, and it was so good. I've had it. A Bridger from the Library Ladder recommended it greatly to me. I think Kev also had read it and enjoyed it. Creation Lake is great. Well, I wanted to read it this month, but that's not going to happen, so... Oh, you know what? I still need to watch Nosferatu. Yeah, Nosferatu is definitely in the conversation. I forgot. I knew I had watched another movie recently that was vampires. Vampires are very prevalent in my life right now for some reason, and Nosferatu was sick. I loved it. Daniel said, Rune Lords is all right. I only read first book, though. I've got at least all of the first arc in paperback somewhere, though. Well, don't kill the hype train for the read-along before it begins, Daniel. I'm trying to get the people going. Greetings, Nutter Butter. Well, hello. How's it going, Tom? Dr. Chase is in that stream too. Do you formally excommunicate in all future network content? That is slightly disappointing. Jimmy, I thought by letting you read something you wouldn't otherwise get, it would make you happy. Yes, Pratchett makes me happy, but you read Mort. It's more than More you than guards. Derry, I read Mort and have a review for it on my channel, and I think you commented on it. I know you commented because you've always watched all my videos and commented on it. I've read Mort. I've read Mort and Reaper Man, actually, and enjoyed both of them a lot. Reader's Journey said, yeah, I just burned through Bone Clocks for sure. Broke into my top 10 all time. Absolutely love to hear it, dude. Love to hear it. Underrated film comic is good too. I did not know 30 Days of Night was a comic book. Oh man, people love 30 Days of Night. I didn't know if anyone had. I didn't know if it was popular. Infected might have been the movie I was thinking of. Putrid. That is one thing I will say about these streams that I really like, and it's kind of what I would like to get more into. Is like, yes, this is all book focused, and I know chatting with nuts goes off the rails sometimes. But sometimes it's just fun to. I think a lot of things, but getting the same out loud and seeing people like remember things is a lot of fun. I just like how freeform that this can be. It's great. Yeah, I love Nosferatu. Me too. I thought it was fantastic. Near Dark is the vampire movie. I don't know if I've seen Near Dark. I haven't watched the new Salem's Lot. Did anyone watch the new Salem's Lot that came out from Warner Brothers? Do you think Parasite could be considered a vampire movie and that poor we're leeching off the goodwill and kind hearts of the rich? Mitch, you are such a troll, bro. Whoa. Eric said that The Way of the Wolf, which is a vampire post-apocalyptic novel, is also an Appalachian setting. Eric. Also, Eric, shout out to you. You've been supporting the channel for a very long time, and I greatly appreciate it. I haven't not been ordering books, but I'll tell you what, I am going to look up The Way of the Wolf. I'm looking for a very specific stat here. So The Way of the Wolf, oh God, there's so many books called this. Is it Magnetic Magic Book 1? That looks like a YA thing. I need you to tell me who the author is of that, Eric, please. Because I can't, there's so many on Amazon, I have no idea. Like there's a Bear Grylls book of him being eaten by a wolf on the front cover. Let the Right One is without a doubt my favorite vampire book. I think there's a movie adaptation of that, right? I watched that and really liked it. Derry said, you have read Mort already. I'm still shaky on the adrenaline rush from a giant spider giving me a frighten. I still don't think Guards is you. Try Small Gods on audio. Okay. I know I said I was going to read Guard, but if Derry is telling me that I should do Small Gods, I might start both and then pick the one that's more interesting for me. Is The Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort? No, wait. The Way of the Wolf. That's the Wolf on Wall Street. What are we doing? E.E. Knight. The cover is awful. Okay, let me see. E.E. Knight. We're looking up The Way of the Wolf. Oh, God damn it, Eric. It's book 1 of 11. What are we doing? For only 400 pages. That was the stat I was looking for. So Louisiana, 2065. A lot has changed in the 43rd year of the Curlin Order. Possessed of an unnatural and legendary hunger, the bloodthirsty Reapers have come to Earth to establish a new order built on the harvesting of enslaved human souls. They rule the planet, they thrive on the scent of fear, and if it is night, as sure as darkness, they will come. All right, I mean, that sounds decent. Like, it sounds like, by the way, this cover is horrible. But it sounds like, I mean, it's the same pitch for almost every single vampire thing. But the fact that it is in Appalachia, book 1 of 11 is devious work, Eric. Devious work. I tell you I'm reading book 2s and you throw an 11-book series at me. What is this, Wars of Light and Shadow with vampires? What are we doing? All right, I'm going to order it. I can't tell you when I will read it. But that, you got me with the Appalachian setting and post-apocalyptic. If it's on my shelf, it's more likely to be read. So that's the best I can do for you, Eric. What do you prefer, Jimmy? Cop shows or American Gods? Huh? I would say cop shows. I didn't really like the show American Gods. I will never throw shade at Guards Britain. It's an excellent general rec for readers, but I feel like I know Jimmy, and I think he prefers Small Guards, and neither is better than the other. Honest to God, it's going to come down to which one's shorter, because I have to read 75,000 pages of The Wandering Inn this month. How about Necroscope? Vampires with a Lovecraftian origin. That could be really cool. From what I remember, they are quick, easy reads, but it's probably been almost 20 years since I've read it. I hope that this doesn't turn into like an S.M. Sterling type thing, because S.M. Sterling was like a post-apocalyptic, revert back to Dark Ages, technology doesn't work. And I was like, that sounds sick. And then I read it and I was like, this sucks. I did not like it. Pale Fire or something. So I hope E.E. Sterling is better than S.M. Or what is it? E.E. Knight. Yeah, E.E. Knight is better than S.M. Sterling. The small guards decision is going to be interesting. Let the Right One In is a standalone. Tom, you're speaking my language, my friend. Oh, here we go. Mindolin said, I read the new first few Vampire Earth books, Jimmy. Kind of feel like it's going to read like S.M. Sterling for you. As long as there's not a Lord of the Rings replica bow used, I'll be fine. That's when I put down that book. I was like, nah, ain't happening. Check out The Golden by Lucius Shepard if you want weird vampire Gormenghast castle-like setting is written beautifully. Good Lord. I mean, that sounds fantastic. I guess I'll have to put a new Patreon pick in now. Yeah, you could do volume 2 if you wanted to. Cirque du Freak is some of the best YA ever. Vampire action galore. Well, it sounds like I have a ton of vampire stuff. If someone could write these down and send them to me, that'd be fantastic. Or you can leave them in the comments afterwards. So yeah, June's going to be relatively awful in real life and hopefully not in reading. But who knows? I'm definitely gonna be putting in some work to try to get through all of these. It's gonna be something to see. Traveling Vampire Show by Richard Lehman. I feel like I either own that or I've heard of it. I have so many books, man. So that's it. That's it for this. We ended up having to do 3 patron picks. I'm also gonna be watching a Hobbit edit, which I'm gonna have to like review on my next wrap up, which I've never done anything like that. So that'll be interesting to watch. And then remember, in July, we're going to start Rune Lords, which is going to be really fun. And shout out to everyone who was here throughout the entire stream. And if you're watching after the fact, I greatly appreciate you. This has been a lot of fun. I had a phenomenal month. Bluest was definitely book of the month, but really overall, no real duds other than maybe Firewalkers as a novella. But Ogres made up for that tenfold. Read the Ogres, people. Please, read the Ogres. I think it's fantastic. But that's going to be it for me. A 2 hour in a nutshell is quite long for only 4 books read, but I guess I had a lot to say. Thanks for being here. I appreciate you so much. If you like the stream, you can hit like. If you dislike, you can hit dislike. If you love to think about subscribing, you can see all the crazy stuff I'm doing. There will be normal videos uploaded as well, sporadically. I'm kind of getting back into the groove of that, but these live streams are where I feel like I shine the most and honestly have the most fun doing, and always kind of pushing the envelope if I can. So there's a Patreon description. It's optional, but always appreciated. The top 2 tiers get to put a pick on the Patreon wheel, which is always cool. And yeah, I guess that's it. This has been a nice break from real life. So thanks for that. And I greatly appreciate all of you. And I hope that you have a wonderful day. Until I see you next time, be good, be safe. And remember to always keep turning the page.